We stand on the threshold of a great new age of exploration. Its ultimate destination, the furthest reaches of the universe.
3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everybody. How are we doing? Yes. When there are conversations about utilizing overflow space, I just think it's going to be a great night, right? Welcome to RTP180. Welcome to the Frontier here on the campus of the beautiful Research Triangle Park. I'm your host. That's me, Andrea Cash. I own and operate Andrea Cash Creative in Durham. I help nonprofits and small businesses in the Triangle with their communications. On behalf of the team, let's thank our presenting sponsor, RTI International. Give it up. And we also want to thank our contributing partner, Blue on Farrington, a Zarimba management company. Yes. So in keeping with tonight's theme of color, the Museum of Life and Science was in the lobby sharing information about color and butterflies. I Am Mapping the Universe was back here, and they were showcasing an interactive black light anaglyph pop-up art exhibit. I've never said that before, but it was very cool. I checked it out. Full Steam was here, assessing how different ingredients change beer colors and taste. RTP Uncorked was here, sharing how different ingredients change wine color. I love an educational happy hour. Love it. So who has never been to an RTP 180? Nice. All right, several people. So let's talk about the format a little bit. We got 5 speakers tonight. We are really going to limit them to 5 minutes because we like to challenge them, but also we want to allow 5 minutes for each speaker to have a Q&A with you. The way the Q&A works is you raise your hand if you have a question. I run around with the microphone so you can ask your question. Really want to encourage you to talk about this program tonight on social media. Let's just say your color commentary is welcome online. I know, good one, right? The hashtag is RTP180, and you can tag us at FrontierRTP. A little bit about this lovely venue, the Frontier. It has been a home for creative freelancers, startups, STEM professionals, emerging companies for almost 10 years. In addition to everyday co-working activities, they've got special events, happy hour, yoga, pop-up events. You can check out the full calendar at rtp.org. And now we're going to get to our first speaker, just like that. So she is an independent design theorist, researcher, and educator whose current focus is the use of color for human comfort in architectural design. She has spent the past decade researching and developing a 21st century paradigm of color psychology, a topic central to her writings and conference presentations. Her goal is to provide designers with rational, evidence-based tools for making effective color choices. And when she isn't thinking about color, she's got her hands in clay at her favorite pottery studio. Let's welcome Ellen Divers.
I'm going to try to not fall off the stage first. Well, you're going to be hearing tonight from a number of speakers, and they're going to be speaking to you about how color happens out there in the world. Well, what happens when color enters your visual system and then your brain? That's the psychology of color. And tonight I want to talk to you about how the paradigm has shifted in the past couple of decades with regard to how it actually works. So we will begin at the very beginning, where we all began our color education with the color wheel, Roy G. Biv. You probably know by now that Isaac Newton developed the first color wheel. It is said that he drilled a hole in his shutter and he allowed a beam of light to shine through the prism, thus revealing the colors of light, the spectrum. And he depicted these colors in a simple drawing, just a pen and ink drawing. A century later, artists and naturalists became interested in developing their own wheels. But they weren't interested really in the physics and in the color of light the way Newton was. They wanted to depict the colors of the world around them. So you can see that this wheel, which is credited to Moses Harris, has acquired a lot more colors than Newton's original 6. But when people became interested in the psychology of color, which wheel do you think they turned to as a reference? They went to Newton. And so that means that today, if you Google color psychology, these are the results you will get, and you'll end up with some sort of graphic, maybe like this one, where you've got the 6 hues and various word associations. For example, red. Red is the most studied color, and we associate it with danger, with passion, with anger. It's a pretty exciting color. But red isn't just a color. Red is the family of colors, and it includes variations like a pale red, a muted red, and a dark red. And I would not use the word exciting to describe any one of them. So therein lies the problem, and we have the same problem with the rest of the hues. So in fact, what we have had until now isn't so much a psychology of color as it is a psychology of vivid color. And this, as you can see, is a very, limited view of color. But what if instead of always thinking about colors and organizing them according to red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, we instead organize them according to vivid, pale, muted, and dark? And that's the direction that 21st century psychology is headed. I conducted a study where I asked people to choose words to describe each of these, what I call the color sets. And they obviously represent pale, dark, vivid, and muted colors. And they told me, for instance, that pale and muted colors are pretty relaxing, but that vivid and dark colors are intense. They also said that pale and vivid colors are cheerful, but that muted colors and dark colors, not so much, kind of serious. So I think it's important that designers know this, that they understand this way of thinking, especially designers who work in healthcare. Because people in healthcare are generally anxious, depressed, or in pain. And designers can make matters better or worse for them through the colors they choose. Ideally, we'll have spaces that are relaxed, cheerful, and friendly. And now we have evidence, and we have tools to help them do that. One of those tools is the color compass. The color compass organizes the results of my research. So now we have language. We have words to describe pale, dark, vivid, and muted. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this to analyze this room, this waiting room that I was in recently. You can see that it was executed in muted colors pretty much. So the compass actually tells us that these colors, muted colors, are relaxing, so that's good. We're about a third of the way there. But they are not cheerful and they are not friendly. For that, the compass points us to pale and to vivid colors. Now, we don't want to go all the way to vivid, okay, because you just saw that vivid colors are really intense, and we have enough intensity already in healthcare. But designers have a whole range of colors between muted and vivid that they can use, for instance, to make this room more hospitable and friendly. So the takeaway today is that Roy G. Biv just doesn't cut it as a way of explaining the psychology of color. 21st century psychology, though, is going beyond hue and embracing the meanings of pale, dark, vivid, and muted colors. So now designers, or any one of you, can make wiser choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Ellen? I saw a hand up over here.
I love the fact that you've got the 21st century perspective, because that really helps. So my question is, what about people who don't see colors as well? They may not be completely colorblind, but there's an amazing percentage of humans who, to varying degrees, can't see all the spectrums or have mixed spectrums. Some of them are especially cloudy. So grayscales are what, and I wonder if in your research or other people's research, is that considered, or is that just a whole separate field? I know it's about colors tonight, but since you mentioned this, discerning this, I'm asking.
Yes. It's a very good question. The research is really, the research I'm doing is mainly around the psychology part, and it's very new, very young. I think there is room, certainly that kind of work needs to be done. I think, though, that this way of thinking about color has the advantage, I mean, everyone can see pale or dark and the range, like you said, the grayscale. So at least, you know, that kind of information, which I happen to think is derived from our experience with nature, with day and night, you know, those are I mean, that's information I think that's encoded. But yeah, it has a huge impact on design. I have a colleague who does work on trying to figure out how to make websites more user-friendly for people with color blindness, you know, because the colors they choose just are not very helpful. So.
Go down here.
Thank you for adding some color to color. I am curious, like, what does your research say about people's awareness about how they're being influenced by color?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, I think if you're interested in color, you're aware that you're influenced by it. You know, I think people, you can't not notice it. But I think there are a lot of people who go through their lives and that's just not where their attention is. So they're not necessarily going to notice how they're being shaped, how their behavior or their actions are being shaped. So.
While I walk to the next question, where can we find the color compass?
Oh, yes. Well, the color compass is in an article that I wrote, which you can find on my website, ellendiversdesign.com. You can go to the color research tab, and that article, as well as some other ones, are there and accessible to you. Or you can just search for color compass Ellen Divers, and it'll probably come up.
Have you looked into how specific individuals react to this stuff? Like, for example, I gravitate to the vivid colors every time, and I know that a lot of people don't. Have you explored that territory?
No, but I will say that my survey, I've had the opportunity to work with design students, and when I do that, I always have them take my survey. And recently, I had students in Chile take it, and it was really interesting to see how their reaction was especially concerned the vivid and muted range of colors, where they were absolutely like, no, muted is not friendly at all, whereas my subjects here in the US were kind of divided about it. So, I'm sorry?
Where was the other place you said?
Like in Chile? I mean, or in Chile, yes, it's Chile.
Hi, Ellen. Thanks for having us look beyond the hue. What do you refer to this category as? You know, if it's about intensity or, you know, from, you know, pale, muted, vivid, what do you call it? Is there an equivalency to hue?
The technical terms, we're talking about value, which is lightness and darkness, and chroma, which goes from, you know, very muted to very vivid. So those are the technical color terms. Yes.
Hi. Is there any color that you would associate with good mental health, or maybe you might not be the one to answer this, maybe one of the other presenters
You know, I
might.
think this is where there's been a whole lot of confusion. One of the issues, I mean, I think in general, and this sort of, I think, based on the answers people gave me, I think, you know, extreme color is a problem for mental health. Either extreme lack of color, you know, grays, muted, no color, or extremes of too much color can kind of jangle people's nerves. So I think that right now is sort of the cautionary, I guess, advice that I have for people. If you're dealing with mental health situation, avoid the extremes.
gonna walk over to this side of the room, but while I do, what's your best advice for using color in design? Asking for someone always decorating my house.
Okay. Okay, well, I think if it's your house, you do whatever the heck you want. But if you're designing for a public space, and specifically where people are in maybe a fragile condition, you need to be cautious of the extremes and try to mix it up. Don't just do one color or just do vivid colors, or just, try to mix it up, make it interesting. That's how nature is, okay? Nature has variety. So we want variety, but we don't want extremes.
Hi, Ellen. This is really interesting. My question is, you were talking about awareness of color, if you're aware of color, but what about subconsciously? A lot of times we don't know how color is affecting us.
Oh, well, that's true. And then what can I say about that? That part is not really my research. I mean, I think, there's certainly plenty of studies. The traditional way of conducting these studies is they would use, either big blocks of color and make people stare at them and, take their galvanic skin response and their heart rate and all that kind of thing to sort of predict, how it's going to affect them without their consciously knowing that. But, those studies are extreme. I think those are not real life. I mean, in real life, you don't do that to people. And I think that's one of the problems with traditional research is it's on one color. Who designs with one color? And they're in situations that are not, everyday situations. So they miss out on the reality aspect of design.
Last question.
Really quickly, this is great. Thank you for being here. Your example of the waiting room, I wonder how would you distinguish the color temperature of the lighting from the color temperature of the walls, right? So the first thing I saw was the cold fluorescent lighting. Yeah. That waiting room could be really inviting. It could be a nice soothing gray.
Makes a big difference.
And so how are you self-checking that you're not making an error in lighting temperatures, because lighting does influence how we see color.
Absolutely.
And we didn't talk about that in your example, so I just thought maybe you could comment.
It's absolutely true. Even though, I was kind of ragging a little bit on physics and Isaac Newton, the fact is we can't see color without those rays of light, without the wavelengths, right? So color is completely dependent on good lighting. And I think the important thing is to use, really kind of natural light, not going to extremely cold light, not extremely yellow light. I think you find, sort of a happy medium, that, again, it's staying away from extremes. But, that does make a gray area or a muted area harder to take when the lighting is harsh and cold. Mm-hmm.
Invest in good lighting. Thank
Yes.
you. Ellen Divers, everybody. Thank you. I'm going to get behind you here. All right, off to a great start. And now for our next speaker. She is an assistant professor in the Textile Engineering, Chemistry, and Science Department at NC State. She also serves as the principal investigator of the Sustainable Dye Chemistry Laboratory. It focuses on designing, developing, and applying dyes through both traditional and innovative methods that prioritize sustainable chemistry practices. From NC State, she earned her PhD in fiber and polymer science with a minor in chemistry. She also has her BS in polymer and color chemistry. Let's hear it for Dr. Tova Williams.
Awesome. So I'm going to try and juggle these three things. We'll see how it goes. But hello, everyone. All right, so look around. Color is literally everywhere, from this wall over here to our clothes, our hair, our makeup, if we're wearing makeup. You get the point. Color is everywhere. But imagine a world with hardly no color. We talked about this earlier, right? It'd be quite depressing. Recently, I just came back from my honeymoon in Hawaii. Yeah, thank you. It was awesome. I wish I was still there, I'm not gonna lie. But as we just heard, color it plays a role in how we feel, right? So immediately after I stepped off the plane, I saw these wonderful colors, and my mind went straight into vacation mode. But color serves many other functions. It can tell us when to go, when to slow down, or speed up for some of us, or when to stop, like a traffic light, right? This chameleon, it can help protect, and so the chameleon will change its color to adapt to its environment. It can help us identify things like fruits and vegetables. It can also help power devices like solar cells. These are just a few of the many things that color can do for us. Okay? We can get color a variety of ways, mainly from various pigments and dyes that we can extract from nature or we can make in the lab, so we synthesize them in that case. But then there's this thing called structural color that we scientists call it, and that comes from, for example, a butterfly's wings. And so a butterfly, it has very tiny structures in its wings that will reflect light in different ways and give rise to certain colors. And so that's pretty cool because in this case, you know, due to structural color, you wouldn't need a dye or a pigment to get the color. And so scientists are trying to study this in more detail so that we can color materials in a more sustainable way without relying on the production of pigments and dyes. Okay? So as mentioned, I am a professor at NC State. I'm a new professor. My lab was established almost 3 years ago. So back in 2022, the Sustainable Dye Chemistry Lab. A few of my students are actually here today. Yes, so sweet, right? So as mentioned, we focus on applying, developing, designing dyes primarily. We do this for various materials, whether it's hair or textile. And so dyes, they are small chemicals. Side note, I'm going to have some chemical structures up for those of you who don't like chemistry. Bear with me just a little bit. So yeah, dyes are small colored chemicals, and they will absorb in the visible range of the electromagnetic spectrum. So that's roughly 400 to 700 nanometers. Dyes are going to be what we call soluble in whatever we apply them in. So it's typically water. What does that mean? They're going to dissolve well. So think about Kool-Aid. Yeah. I actually think I had this flavor, mixed it up not too long ago for my husband and myself, something similar. Anyways, after you mix it, you know, the Kool-Aid has the dye and the sugar, and at the end you should get a solution so you don't really see any dye particles left. Pigments, they can also absorb in the visible range, so roughly 400 to 700 nanometers. We can find these in paints, like on that wall. They're not going to be soluble in whatever we apply them in. So if we think about this paint, the pigment's going to be suspended. But when we go to paint a wall, we get this nice coverage. We don't really see particles, which is nice. Okay? So let's talk synthetic versus natural, the big debate, right? And so we see this with dyes, but we also see this with other chemicals. Dyes that we make in the lab, they can be great because they can give us things like resistance to fading if we expose them to light or if we wash them several times, if we apply them to our textiles and whatnot. On the flip side, natural dyes, while they're not coming from petroleum, they can fade over time very easily. And so it's hard to have the best of both worlds sometimes. But that's where my research comes in. And so what if we could grow or make our dyes using bacteria or other biological hosts to make dyes that nature already makes, or convince nature to make something it doesn't already make? Okay? We're actually doing that in collaboration with the Gavin Williams Laboratory at NC State. Or, sorry, it's a little hard to see these structures, but imagine there's some chemical structures up here. I blurred them out a little bit, but I guess I blurred them out a little bit too much. What if we started with a natural dye source and we used enzymes to do things like remove groups we don't want on the dye, So let's say we want something that's hydrophobic or non-water loving, and we remove things that are hydrophilic or water loving, so we ultimately get something that's hydrophobic and not water loving. Okay, what if we do that with enzymes? Or what if we do that with organic chemistry? And so my lab is actually currently focused on this now, and so stay tuned for our results on this. I'm gonna coin these hybrid dyes where we get the best of both worlds. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up now, because it's been 5 minutes. So as we're trying to move toward a more sustainable future and think about, how we can get our colors, let's think not only let's think about what color can give us beyond the beauty aspect, right? And can give us many other functions. But let's also use, if we're people who are making dyes in the lab or creating color, let's use that as an opportunity to challenge ourselves to make a more sustainable future. And so thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Let me stay up here.
A few questions for you. All right, questions for Dr. Williams. We'll go back here.
Hi, Dr. Williams. So I'm also at the Wilson College of Textiles, so I wanted to say thank you for emailing us and letting us know about this event.
Thank you for coming.
Yes. And so my question is, so you brought up natural versus synthetic dyes. And one of the reasons people want to use natural dyes is because of the toxicity of synthetic dyes. But the longevity of those synthetic dyes are much better. And so what are you seeing encouraging developments in that space to either lengthen the life of natural dyes, whether that's like a hybrid, or like making synthetic dyes that aren't as bad for us and the natural environment?
Yes,
Thank you.
really appreciate your question. So I'm going to answer it, but I'm going to say a few things that may not be what you asked, but will help with answering it, if that makes sense. I am, again, so glad you asked that. So the common thinking is synthetic is bad, natural is safe, right? But there are cases where you have synthetic dyes that are less of a hazard than natural dyes. So there are some natural dyes that are mutagenic, that could be carcinogenic, right? But we think, oh, just because it came from nature, it's not going to pose a hazard, right? Natural means safe, okay? On the side of synthetic dyes, we still have to, think about how we're producing them. But there are several examples of synthetic dyes that are not mutagenic, and they wouldn't be carcinogenic, and they're not aquatic toxins, et cetera. And so just thinking from that mindset, I try to be careful to say one is better than the other. It just really depends. You mentioned longevity, right? And so with several of the natural dyes, we don't get that. But there is a group of natural dyes that are very similar to synthetic dyes. I actually have one on my slides. I don't know if I could go back. Let me see if I can go back. Right here. Okay, not this slide. Okay, sorry, I thought I had this up here. Let's go back. So this bottom dye is a natural dye, right? But there are dyes that have a very similar structure that are synthetic, okay? These dyes are actually dyes that are more likely to be resistant to fading to UV light. So working with these natural dyes is advantageous. You mentioned, I guess, hybrid dyes. That's the space I'm trying to get my lab to be in, where we are working with natural dyes and we're doing modifications so we can get towards something that's more resistant to fading, more gives us more longevity. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay.
Okay, we'll do one more quick question right here.
Hi. What are resources available to the public to help us, if you're environmentally conscious, to avoid those mutagenic and carcinogenic color spaces, maybe in clothing, food, whatever your concern may be?
Yeah, I'll say this. So like our foods and things, they should have on the label like the dyes that are present, even with hair dyes, same thing. And I'll answer just from the perspective of if you know you're likely to be allergic to something, because allergies another concern. It's like FD&C Red 40. People want to stay away from that. And so I would just be mindful of like just reading labels and just checking, you know, does this thing that's red, whether it's a food or dye, whatever, I mean a hair dye, does this have something I know I can't consume? I'm trying to think of like if there's a website. I'm sure there are several websites out there that you could do research on to help you with that. I don't want to direct you too wrong. But I just wanted to give that example. I would just be mindful of your products because it should be disclosed, the colorants that are within those products. Does that answer your question? I hope, somewhat.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you. So just leave it on. There we go. We're good. Yeah, thank you. Okay. For our next speaker now, he is an associate professor at NC State's Department of Horticultural Science. His research aims to use genetic approach to understand genes controlling quality characteristics in fruits and vegetables. Specifically, he works on phytochemicals that provide color to fruit and vegetables and health benefits for our diet. Give it up for Dr. Massimo Iorizzo.
Okay, thank you. So we will switch a little bit gear, and instead of talking about dye, and so in my world of fruit and vegetable, when we talk about dye, actually we talk about pigments, bioactive, and nutrients. You can see here some of the source of pigments or nutrients from fruit and vegetable. They have a different color. So in some cases, they are a source of nutrients like alpha and beta carotene from sweet potato, for example. It's an essential nutrient in our diet. Or there are other lutein from banana, lycopene from watermelon, or anthocyanin and chlorophyll from spinach and blueberry that are colorant, that are nutrient and also are bioactive. And then they have some health property. So for in my world, when I talk about color from fruit vegetable, I talk about pigments and health benefits. But in the last few years, with the concern about the synthetic colorants, then has started to attract attention of use of fruit and vegetable as a source of natural colorant. This is a market that is growing very, very much because these are natural colorants that can be used in different applications. Now, it comes with a challenge, and some of the challenges were mentioned before. It's challenging to find a stable source of natural colorants because you need to produce at the scale that it's needed for certain products. And most importantly, natural colorants, unfortunately, don't come as stable as the synthetic colorant. They are exposed to different pH, different metrics, different temperature, and different processing. So it's not as stable as the synthetic colorant. So in my lab, what we do, the other thing is that natural colorant, they don't come, you cannot synthesize in the lab as easily as the synthetic colorant. there is a machine in the plant, called genes, that synthesize the colorant. So then we need to understand the genes that synthesize this colorant. So that has been one of the part of my lab, of my work. It's understand what pigments make the color of different fruit and vegetables. So then we try to connect color to bioactive, to gene, and to DNA assay. And why we do that? Because when we want to develop a new cultivar of any fruit and vegetable, we can use a DNA marker, DNA strategy to select for those desired color or certain specific colorant or bioactives, okay? So that is the reason why we study genetics of the bioactives. One of the crop that I work with is carrot, and you can understand that even though we know mainly carrot has been orange, you can see from here that you have it all, right? You have all type of color in carrot. So, carrot is viewed as a healthy vegetable. It provides about 60% of the beta-carotene, which is the precursor of provitamin A. We must uptake provitamin A in our diet. So it's very important vegetable, carrot. So, and then multiple health benefits have been associated with carrot. Everybody likes carrot because it's healthy. So, how carrot is used? Largely as a fresh or processed vegetable, but in the last few years it's gained attraction as a application in the natural colored industry. And one particular color that has been used from carrot, it's the purple carrot, which is very, very not much used you don't find much in the store, purple carrot, but it's very, very popular in some part of the world. So, but purple carrot, it's produce anthocyanin, which can provide a wide range of colors from pink to purple. It produces a large amount of anthocyanin. Consumer, there are some companies that have been doing internal survey, and they found that consumers like to see carrot as a source of natural colorant in the labels. And then carrot has a large amount of acylated anthocyanin. So carrot largely produce cyanidin. These are 5 structures of cyanidin carrot produce, but the 3 of them are called acylated. This chemical structure, for the chemical structure they have, they are acylated anthocyanin. And what we found in a study we conducted is that acylated anthocyanin are more stable at different pH and different temperature that they are exposed. So in the last few years, about 10 years, I've been studying about the color of carrot, the genetic mechanism that control the color of carrot. And here it's an example. From white to yellow carrot, there is one gene in the genome of carrot that make the conversion. And there are 3 genes actually that make the conversion from yellow to orange carrot. So what about purple? Purple, basically, in carrot, there are 3 genes in the carrot genome that make carrot to be purple. And these 3 genes basically activate the cascade of genes that are needed in the carrot plants, in the carrot cell, to accumulate anthocyanin. You can start to understand that synthetic colorant, it's much, much easier, the mechanism of producing those, but natural, no. You first need to understand very, very complex genetics in the plants to understand how do you make these pigments. In the purple carrot, actually, there is another gene that we identified that control the acylation, that reaction that I told you that it's very important for stabilizing the colorant. There is a gene in chromosome 3 of carrot that synthesizes the acylation reaction. And then we were able to find the gene, and now we have a DNA marker that you can see there. We can run a PCR, a simple PCR reaction, and then we can distinguish the plants that have high acylated anthocyanin or low acylated anthocyanin. And why this is important? Because like I told you before, if we select carrot that have high acylated anthocyanin, they will produce pigments that can be used in the industry, in the natural colorant industry, that is more stable. So that's why it's important. So then we can use these tools now. All the genes that we've identified actually can be used in order to select for the color you want, the crop of color you want, in this case carrot, but also not only for the color, but also for the structure of the anthocyanin that you desire because can be more stable in the application of the natural colorant industry. Well, with this, I hope you get a better idea that it's a little bit more complicated working with natural colorant. We pay a price for that, but it's feasible and require a lot of research. And thank you for your attention, and use and eat colorful fruit and vegetables.
Okay, eat your fruits and veggies. We're gonna go over here.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating. So this is a really dumb question probably, but does the genetic makeup transfer from different vegetables? So does a purple eggplant or a purple green pepper have the same genetic makeup as a purple carrot? And I want to start saying purple because that was such a better way to say it. It made me happy.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So actually we are, the good thing is that there are a large number of the genes that make up the bone of the synthetic pathway, they are conserved across species. And yes, we can find genes that are in eggplants that maybe are doing the same thing in carrot. But there are some genes, like the one that I told you about, that they modify the structure of the anthocyanin for them to be isolated. They are not highly conserved. You need to do some extra work to find them. So it really depends where they are in the process of synthesizing. Some are very, very conserved, some are not.
One more question. Anybody over here?
You commented on how some colors are bioactive. Is that a lot of the colors in fruits and vegetables that are bioactive, or a kind of a very small amount?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yeah, the one that I showed there, alpha and beta carotenoid, anthocyanin, lutein, lycopene, chlorophyll, they are bioactive. They have bioactivity. So some of them in general, we call them bioactive. Some of them are retained, considered a nutrient because are essential in our diet. Some of them, like lycopene, lutein, or anthocyanin, they are not essential as the way that we see. They are not structural of our diet, but they provide benefits. So the one that I showed here, there, those 4 or 5 family of bioactive, yes, they have a biological activity in our body. Thank you.
So I want to ask the last question. Which carrot came first? Orange, purple?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So I talked about how plants synthesize this metabolism, but one of the questions that I try to answer also for carrot, for example, is the history of carrot domestication and the selection of the orange carrot, for example. No, orange carrot was not the first. The first carrot were purple and yellow about 1,000, 1,200 years ago. Those are the first reported carrot. And then orange carrot actually was selected in the 1500, 1600 in Northern Europe. And actually we did some work recently that demonstrated that. So yeah, and then red came after, probably in Asia. And then white, actually, it's a color that existed probably along with the other one since the beginning. Carrot, actually, it's meaning that the plants, the root doesn't produce any pigments, so then it's white.
Thank you so much. Fascinating. Dr.
Thank you.
Yoritzo. Okay, now for our fourth speaker. She is an innovational analyst with the RTI Innovation Advisors, yes, where she leads the chemicals of concern and sustainable formulation efforts. She has a BS in polymer and color chemistry from NC State. She is currently an MBA candidate at the NC State Jenkins School of Management. She joined RTI in 2021 after spending several years in industry where she formulated and brought to market a range of home care, personal care, and cosmetic products. Let's hear it for Kayla Messier-Jones.
Ooh, all right, we're not gonna fall off this thing. All right, so I know we've learned a lot about color tonight. It really is everywhere, all around us. It's in the products you use every single day, all day. So it's not there just for funsies. Color is added for a purpose. It has a reason, for the most part. Sometimes it's just added for fun. But in the end, it's really giving you that first impression of a product or a brand, and it's helping to continue that experience and really boost that connection. So I bet most of you in here could probably name all three of these products. So if you don't mind, what's the first one? That's right, good job. What about the next one? Yeah, all right, you know this. Third one? Okay, so my theory was correct. It has a purpose, and it's not just to help you identify and perceive the product, the brand identity. It has additional, purpose there. So color has also been used for aesthetic and symbolic purposes for a very long time. So we're going to go through a little bit of history. This is a very brief history. There's a lot of history with colorants. So, and I'm not a historian, as fun as that would be. But in ancient Mesopotamia, they used crushed gems and semi-precious stones and would line their eyes and lips with it. And then ancient Egyptians went a little further. They used some fun minerals like lead ore and malachite to paint their faces as well. Fast forward quite a while to 1856, William Henry Perkin created the first synthetic dye, the lovely color mauve. So this really kick-started the synthetic dye creation, and after this, we're seeing a lot of progress. Fast forward to the early 1900s, and color cosmetics are really picking up. So we've got Maybelline, L'Oreal, Max Factor emerging, nail polish is a new product, lip gloss, one of my favorites. But with that, comes some concerning ingredients. Arsenical lotion, anyone? So fast forward, 1960, the FDA steps in, and we've got the color additive amendments, which really kind of sets the foundation for future regulation in this space. So when we're talking about color in everyday products, they have many different use cases. It's going to depend on the product itself, as well as the desired effect. So I know we've talked a little bit about pigments and dyes, so I won't spend much time on that. Lakes is something else to consider as well that is used in formulating these products. But looking at cosmetics specifically, lipstick, eyeshadow, blush, foundation, color is really that primary player there. The color is being used for self-expression, it's art, it's symbolic, it's many things. So you're seeing a lot of that. You're formulating with up to around 1 to 30% of that colorant in that formula. When you look at cleaning products and personal care products, you're not gonna have as much color in there. It's being used at a much lower amount, and it's more for, once again, that experience. So purple, maybe it's a lavender fragrance, or a green product might have a more sustainable formula. So the fun part, formulating with colorants, I think it's the fun part. Achieving and maintaining that stable color is really not very easy. There's many things to contend with. I'm gonna talk about just a few of them, but there truly are endless, unfortunately. pH is one of them. You could have two separate formulas. One's a slightly acidic pH, the other's maybe a degreaser, it's a higher pH. And you could put a colorant in, and it's gonna look completely different in each. And so when you're scaling that up as well, you have to pay a lot of attention to the pH and make sure you're not shifting around. You can go from purple to green to blue. Temperature is another one. You wouldn't probably want to leave your products in the car. They might turn a funky shade. Thinking about packaging, this is from the perspective of light a lot of times. The light can degrade the colorant, but you also have to think about maybe the permeability of the packaging itself might be susceptible to oxidation. Product format, you might put something in a water-based formula, spray cleaner, that might not look so good when you add it to soap or a dry powdered product. So just because it works in one product format does not mean it's going to work in something else. Last but not least, other ingredients in the system. This is very broad because I couldn't choose 5. Other ingredients in the system. So even the water itself has metal ions. You could formulate, for example, I created a solution when I first started and it was bright pink one night. I go home, come back the next morning, it's completely transparent. I thought I was losing my mind. So even just using the wrong water or not paying attention to the content of some of your raw materials can impact the color output. In addition, you can also boost the color stability. You can use antioxidants or other ingredients. So all in all, there are many things to consider when you're formulating with colorants. It is a challenge, but it's well worth it in the end because truly, you know, as formulators, you are looking to create a product, but you're also looking to create that experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Over here.
So I've done deep dives on like formulas for cosmetics and like different vitamin C products, so packaging for one. What's the efficacy of a powder-based product for vitamin C, for example, where you activate it by using water versus one in the package? Is one better to use for shelf life and efficacy?
Oh, interesting. So you're asking powder versus a liquid, so like concentrates.
One being a serum versus a powder where you use water.
Oh, interesting. You're talking about like skincare. Oh, okay, yeah, perfect. You know, I don't have the best answer for that probably. Yeah, I think it's really going to depend on this, like how you're applying it. I too have looked into that, and I tend to go the easier route with the serums itself, as long as they're stably formulated with. But I think it just comes down to how you want to, you know, how you want your routine to go. So I don't have the best answer for that, but it's a good question.
Other questions? We'll go back here.
Within your own work, has there been like a specific hue or color that just has like given, like always gives you extra trouble, just across the board?
Yeah, you know, I think it'll depend on the application for me. Right out of school, I actually worked for the Navy, and I worked in the coatings division. So we struggled a lot with gray paint turning pink. So outside my office, we had a giant pink ship, which is really, if you're directing people, you know, it's a great landmark. Aside from that, I know, you know, in textiles, I was at the College of Textiles, and like with textiles, red tends to be very difficult to maintain. It fades very quickly over time. That being said, I know we've talked about kind of the difference between like natural and synthetics. You know, natural in general is very hard to formulate with. I juggle with, you know, consumers really like the idea of natural, but synthetics, you're able to control it more. You can control the toxicity profile a little bit better. You can control how it's behaving in the formula. So I don't know if there's a specific hue outside of that. I really think it depends on the application and where it's going to be, what type of formula, what type of base it's in.
One more question.
I'm fascinated by your experience with consumer products, and I'm just curious, like, what are some of the thoughts that go into choosing a color? I've heard before that, for example, on eBay, red buttons get clicked more often, but I see in some of the products that you picked, there was purple and blue, and these aren't red, and so I'm curious, like, what goes into selecting a color for a product, if you can just talk us through that.
Absolutely, and I will say I am not the expert on the psychology of color, but as far as from the product development standpoint, you will see a lot of color variants associated with fragrance or maybe flavor, so just some way to really tie that product story together. In addition, like I kind of mentioned with maybe more sustainable formulations might be green, cleaning, a lot of times those might be yellow or use like yellow packaging, you'll see like lemon scents. So it really is truly about creating that whole package, that whole experience from the bottle you choose, you know, what's inside of it, of course, even if there's a trigger spray or if there's a dropper, it's about creating that entire experience.
Thank you, Kayla Messier-Jones, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we have arrived at our final speaker. She is a seasoned color and trend forecaster with over 30 years of fashion industry experience, working on fashion teams like Lane Bryant, Saks Department Store, Cotton Incorporated, Cato Fashions. She's currently a color committee member on the oldest color forecasting group in the US, the Color Association of the United States, which started in 1909. She's also a professor at UNC Greensboro in the Consumer Apparel and Retail Studies Department, where she teaches students all about the world of fashion and textiles. Let's welcome Ann Wood.
Fall off of this. All right. So I'd like everybody to think about what they're wearing today. And then I'd like you to think about the colors that you're wearing today. Have you ever wondered how those colors come to market? Well, that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So our color committee just finished forecasting spring-summer 2026 back in May. And so we are working well in advance of the industry to help bring the right colors to market for the consumers, really before they know they want those colors. So let me talk to you a little bit, I'm going back to the color wheel because, as Emily said, this is very important to understand how the color industry works and how the fashion industry works with color. It's not all devil wears Prada, I'm here to tell you that. There is science, but there's also intuition. So we do work with the color wheel, and I point this out because there are a lot of different historical perspectives, but today's industry works with the most recent iteration, which is the Munsell color system. And so this is what we use to evaluate color. It's all based on the Munsell color system. Now, it's not the only color system out there. There are many color systems used in fashion. This is how companies match their colors to standards that they use to send all over the world when they're dyeing up colors. Here we have an example of two different systems that are out in the marketplace today. Coloro, which is based out of China. It's used by the largest color forecasting organization in the world called WGSN. And then on the right, you have our Chroma, which is a system that has over 7,000 colors, both cotton and polyester. We use this, I've used this in the industry. We also have this at our university, so we teach our students how to work with color standards. But there's many others. Our Chroma is interestingly based in North Carolina, right in Charlotte. And there's also CSI, not crime scene investigation, but Color Solutions International, which is also based in Charlotte, and that is used by Nike. They dye all their standards up right in Charlotte from the Nike organization. But these are just a few. There are others as well. So what happens every season is any team that's developing product, no matter what, whether it's a designer or Kohl's, it really doesn't matter. They are working with color services around the globe. This is an example of a color forecasting service. This is actually ESP. They're based out of New York. They represent many different color services from around the globe. Italy, the A&A design studios in Italy. They have studios out of London, out of Paris, domestic studios. And so they forecast colors, and then they sell these that they're going to use, that people purchase, and then they probably buy several different color services each season, and then they decide what they're going to develop for that particular season in time. And just like our committee, we forecast twice a year. We put out a color card that we sell to the industry, and then they can use that to help determine their decisions for whatever products they're developing. So we have a couple of secret weapons in the industry. We have, first of all, we have the spectrophotometer, which is used extensively in the fashion business to help make sure that colors are consistent no matter what you're dyeing up. So if you're wondering how Nike can always manage to get those NFL colors correct, no matter what team you're talking about, they're using the color spectrophotometer. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a second. And the light box is also the other secret weapon we have. This is the way we evaluate colors under different light sources to make sure that when you buy something in a store and you walk outside or you go in your house, the color doesn't change too dramatically. It's not supposed to change at all, but there is usually a little variation. Okay, so let's talk about the spectrophotometer. What's happening when we use the spectrophotometer? It's creating what's called a QTX file. And now we're going back to the Munsell system, because when we talk about color, I know everybody thinks that Miranda Priestley knows how to talk about color, but when we're in the industry, we talk about color in 3 dimensions that our first speaker mentioned as well. So we talk about the color wheel, so around the circle, think 3 dimensions. Color wheel around the circle, the value light to dark is up and down, and then the inside the circle to the outside of the circle is the chroma, or the saturation. So dull to bright, light to dark, or in the spectrophotometer, we only use 4 quadrants, yellow, red, green, and blue. So that is all we use to talk about color when we're talking technical, the technical side. Okay, but I gotta jump into the fun stuff, which is color forecasting. And I know I'm at time. I'll keep going. So this is, okay, actually the last slide. So what is color forecasting? What do? We are trying to capture the zeitgeist, which means a lovely German word, the spirit of the times. And as color forecasters, we're curious. We're looking at a lot of different aspects of the world, culture, and in these days we use WGSN. It's called the STEPIC method. So it's society, tech, environment, politics, industry, and creative. So we're looking at art. We're looking at what's going on in movies. We're looking at music. We're looking at everything. And we're trying to come up with themes that work for colors moving forward into the next year, okay? So I'm just gonna leave you with a little bit of our fall 2025. We came up with 5 worlds, and I should say I brought all of my most recent seasons, except for spring 2026, because even though we forecasted it, it's not done yet. So I do have all the way up through fall 2025 that you're welcome to look at. I'll be outside afterwards. And so we had developed 5 different worlds for fall 2025. This is one of them, the spiritual world, very soft incandescent hues. If any of you are familiar with the Pantone color of the year for 2024, it's peach fuzz, right? So this very soft apricot. So moving forward, we see those types of hues continuing, but you'll notice there's not an apricot on here, but they're very much in the same level of color. And there's also a really fun silver as well. So I'll just leave you with the thought that color impacts our world. What we wear is what we're experiencing in life, and life is too short to wear only beige. Thank you.
I gotta know if that green is because of Charlie XCX. It's very brat, right? Just saying.
See if I can get this together. As you were talking, I was half remembering stories about fashion colors being a leading economic indicator, and that sounds like maybe an urban legend. I Googled it, found something about nail polish, and maybe it's really a leading indicator. Cool. And then you said stepping, which to me it calls to mind STEEP, or steeple, which is standard acronym in futures, strategic forecasting. I just wondered if the fashion business is conscious of applying the same methods of trying to forecast the world as these other disciplines.
Well, I'm not familiar with that particular methodology that you use, but We are using, we're looking at a lot of different things to come up with our trends. We have a committee of about 6 to 8 people, depending on the season. It's usually the same people, former fashion director of Nordstrom, people who work in New York City. And so we're all looking at different things from different parts of the country. And before we meet, we just come together and we all bring our own palettes, our own forecasts, and then we culminate those. So we're looking at all these different aspects, and I think that other industries are doing the same thing. We look at politics. I delved into the Olympics and what's going on there. You know, what are the key things that people are focusing on? What are things that people are talking about? Is it just Martha and Snoop, or is it more than that? So what's going on? I mean, what music is hot? Is it Shabuzi and Beyonce with the new country? That's super important. Things like that we're always looking at to try to understand where our customers are going to go next.
I'm going to do one more quick question over here because we're short on time.
Thank you. First off, fellow Spartan myself, so glad to see some G representation out here. I'm curious because men's clothing tends to be a lot more muted and kind of, as you say, beigey. So I'm wondering how you forecast out something in the fashion world more for men's styles than you would for women's that tend to be more colorful.
Well, actually, the men's market is getting really interesting because those never wear this color or don't wear whatever, all those rules went out the window. And I think that the men's market is really, really exciting, an exciting place to be and to design right now. So as far as our committee is concerned, we try to focus on more of what one of my friends in the industry calls genderful. So we're talking about just thinking about all genders when we forecast, not specifically men's, women's, children's. They apply to all the different markets because that's really where we're going right now. So, but that's a great question. Thank you.
Ann Wood, everybody. Thank you. All right, did you enjoy RTP 180? Yeah, I learned a lot. So once again, I want to thank our presenting sponsor, RTI International. Want to thank our contributing partner, Blue on Farrington, a Zarimba management company. Let's give it up for our presenters one more time. Thank you. Keep in mind, we are now a quarterly event, and so that means our November event is actually going to be the last of the year, believe it or not. November 21st, the history behind it should be really fascinating. Be sure to register for that. In the next few weeks, the registration will be live at rtp.org. So thank you for joining us. Stick around. We're going to open the bar back up, network, talk to our presenters, and we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.